So our next speaker is from the Virginia Foundation for the Humanities. His name is Matthew Gibson. Matthew is Director of Digital Initiatives at the Virginia Foundation for the Humanities in Charlottesville, Virginia. He also leads the development of Encyclopedia Virginia, a digital humanities publication about the state's history and culture. He and his team have been working with Google Earth Outreach for the past year, developing Street View panoramas of Virginia's historic sites. Matthew.
Thanks very much. So is this working? All right. Thanks, Raleigh and the Google Earth Outreach team for inviting me down to, or up, or over, to talk about the project we've been doing with Encyclopedia Virginia. So we at the Virginia Foundation for the Humanities have been a Street View partner for the last year or so. The title of my talk, it wasn't really, didn't really describe the purpose of really why we began to get into Street View. It's just sort of evolved. I think that's one of the things about Street View and the stuff we've been doing that's been fascinating for us. Is you're sort of doing this stuff and all of a sudden you realize there are a lot more different applications that it can be used for as you're sort of working through it. So the Virginia Foundation for the Humanities, what is it? You've heard of the National Endowment for the Humanities, maybe. The Virginia Foundation for the Humanities is sort of like that, but on a statewide level. There are 50 plus humanities councils in the United States. Our mission is to provide educational opportunities for Virginians so that they can learn about the past to create a more promising future. The idea of like, what did we do badly in the past that we hope not to repeat by knowing what happened? So we sort of support this mission by giving grants to other organizations across the state, but we also have our own projects and programs, one of which is Encyclopedia Virginia, which is what I work on. The purpose of that was to create sort of a comprehensive, online, free, accessible reference work primarily for Virginia's educators that would really help them learn about stuff by having access to primary resources, to narrative content, to high-res media objects, and now Street View, so that they can better teach and engage their students. History takes place in time and space. That's where historical events happen, right? So the idea of mapping becomes a very important part of adding features to Encyclopedia Virginia. Back in 2012, for the first Geo for Good Summit, I think it was the first one, my colleague Peter Hedlund came out and really with the idea of making our mapping platform, which at the time was using Simile Exhibit, sort of throwing that out and making something a little more responsive and robust. And so that's one of the reasons we came out. And then he started learning about Street View and the opportunities that Google had with Street View partners. So when he came back to Virginia, he and I started talking about, well, what can we do with Street View? I know we can engage our users with our content. They can look at our map that's kind of just flat. Wouldn't it be cool if they could actually, as they're reading about a historical topic or biography, go off and actually visit the place that he or she lived or built or where an event happened? So that got us to the point of, well, what would we capture if we wanted to do this? What are the sort of criteria for inclusion? Because this takes a lot of time. We can't just sort of say, oh, hey, we're going to quit our job for the next 3 years and go out and collect stuff in the state of Virginia. And so what we did was, we created a wish list. We mocked up this little Maps Engine Lite map, mostly for workflow, to sort of say, what are the sites out there that are relevant to the content that we're actually producing in the encyclopedia? What's stuff that Google will let us do, because it's not like, it's not like a world historic site like Monticello, like Thomas Jefferson's Monticello. What are sort of the smaller historical sites that are equally important that we would want to go out and access and give to the public? Then the third part is really how do we actually engage those organizations to get them to buy into the actual project, so they don't think, oh, this is just Google coming in and taking all of our content, which is that kind of response happens sometimes. Well, so last year, actually about this time, Raleigh Seamster, I think, is actually part of the Google cloning project, because she seems to be at lots of different places at once. There have to be at least 2 of her. She came down to Poplar Forest, which was Thomas Jefferson's summer retreat home, outside of Lynchburg, and gave us training. She brought we used the tripod kit. There are lots of different kits and tools for doing Street View. We are on the tripod tool, and so she trained us at Poplar Forest. Admittedly, she took most of the collect that day, but after it was published, we would actually go off to conferences and educational conferences and talk with teachers. We'd have this big sort of like walkthrough on our big screen, and they'd come to us and they'd say, wow, our sort of field trip budgets have been completely decimated. They've been slashed. Our kids can't go off to these places anymore. They can't learn about architecture, how things used to be built, whatever. They can't experience them. This is at least, it may not be the best way, but at least it's a way that they can do that in a cost-effective way. And so our purpose for Street View at the time went from, hey, wouldn't this be cool, to, oh, wow, there's an actual educational application for this. And that sort of serendipity happens to us a lot. So we then sort of began to use that map to go off and to explore other historic sites that we had mapped out there. And so we contacted these organizations, got them to buy into it, and really found that it was a way for them to also promote themselves, to give this sort of advocacy, to be able to sort of walk through. This is Ann Spencer's house. She's a poet, or was a poet in Lynchburg, Virginia, also very active in the Harlem Renaissance. She would have all these intellectuals and literati from the Harlem Renaissance come down to Lynchburg. They'd meet in this room, and they'd talk about things that were happening to African Americans in America at the time. So we were able to do that, and they were able to use that stuff and embed these street views in their own websites, talk about them, really use it as a way to market themselves. So in some ways, it expanded on our larger mission at the VFH, which is to sort of build up the humanities in Virginia. And then something happened on one of the spots on our map called Nominee Hall. It burnt to the ground before we could actually go out and collect it. And it got us thinking, well, actually, maybe this is a way to preserve, well, not actually preserve the site itself, but preserve the memory of the site, or preserve the state of the site as we encountered it. So we went off to another place called Minokin, which was, oops, crikey, which was Francis Lightfoot Lee's house. It was a colonial mansion, sort of a rare one at the time. And we were able to go in and take the street view, not wearing hard hats, which we should have been probably. And you'll see stuff like this little cool crow's nest up here, which is actually blocked off by a 2x4. So it really wasn't useful for business photos. In other words, with business photos, you've got to be able to walk through places. And if there's a 2x4, a user can't walk through that, so therefore it can't be part of your scene. So the idea was, well, we could also use photospheres as sort of one-offs. Photospheres are this awesome tool, which of course there's an app for iOS now, there's an app for Android, you can use it on your tablet, you can even take it with a tripod. Photospheres allowed us to get stuff that was inaccessible via the normal street view. Oh man. Anyway, this is Bacon's Castle right here, which we took. But this is a slave quarter in Bacon's Castle, which we couldn't get to. And we were able to use this and publish it up to Google Views so that people could actually walk through and experience it. So what's the future for us here? The future for us, this is an awesome photograph. I love this photograph. We showed, I think Allie was showing off Google Cardboard the other day. So you pop your Nexus phone in there, and it becomes sort of like the what are those old? Yes, yeah, it's a stereograph basically. And so we can actually show off these spaces using Google Cardboard. And of course, she was pretty amazed, as you can see the sort of agape mouth. But the idea also is we can use these as educational tools. So we're going to try to do this year is go out to local schools, get kids to go out into their community with different tools like whatever tablets they might have or iOS phones they might have in the school. Take sort of historic site panos with them, and then use those cardboards to sort of get their reaction. Sort of what kind of things did they use it for, and what kind of experience did they have? So last but not least, challenges and best practices. One of the challenges is public relations, building trust with people that you want to grab Street View from. No, that's a terrible way to put it. That you want to partner with to produce Street View with. Building their trust, getting their investment. One of the things we've had a challenge with, and I know that the Earth Outreach team knows this, but getting them to have stats for those sites, because it's important to them as a way to market themselves. It's important for them to show the community, show their board of directors, look, this is how many people are coming to Poplar Forest. Time. It takes a lot of time. I mean, Virginia's, it's a relatively big state, not as big as Texas or Alaska, but to go down to Southwest Virginia, it takes like 6 hours to get down there. And on top of what we're already doing, it's hard, but it's I think very worthwhile. Then those non-traditional business photos. Again, photospheres are a great way to sort of ameliorate that challenge. Best practices. Always have at least 2 people. You've got to keep yourself honest, and one person's not going to keep yourself honest. Remember extra batteries, SD cards, and then we've got our own little kind of list, which I'm happy to send to you, but it's really too embarrassing to show you all the things we have to remind ourselves about up here. But that's it.
Matthew, awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
As the trekkers walked around, what was the experience of the trekkers in terms of relating with the public? What did the public think of the trekker?
You know, the one experience we had with the public taking a tour of a site as we were doing it was Ashlawn Highlands, which is James Monroe's house. It sort of is overshadowed by Monticello. Nobody ever goes there. So we're trying to sort of promote it in some ways. And they were cool with it. I mean, they were wondering, oh, hey, they're from Google. It's like, well, actually, really not from Google, but yeah, this is going to be on Google Maps one day. But they were okay with it, and it was the challenge really was with getting into the door with, say, the director of an organization to make sure that he or she understood that overall this is a real benefit. What we're going to be doing here is a benefit for your own institution, hopefully.